My name is Ian Lusick, and I am in Dr. Risley's Bio 140 lab. In recent years, the non-GMO diet has become a hot topic in the science community. When people hear the word non-GMO, they automatically think that this is going to be the healthiest choice of food for themselves and their families. Can this really be the case? Scientists have yet to come to a consensus on whether GMOs are safe for human consumption or not. A little bit of background on the topic. Genetic modification, or modifying the genome of an organism, whether that be a plant or an animal, has been around for at least 32,000 years. This dates back to when hunter-gatherers would follow their prey, and when they would kill their prey, they would leave behind scraps. Well, the wolves that came behind, these people would domesticate these most docile wolves and keep them and breed them to have the most docile offspring that they possibly could. Eventually, genetic modification became genetic engineering, where it wasn't necessarily about selectively breeding animals or species of crops to come out a certain way, but it was about going into the genome of the crop or the animal and editing specific sections of DNA using different technologies brought about by Boyer and Cohen in the late 1900s. This technology was called recombinant DNA technology, and had to do with the bacterial plasmids inside of these organisms that were targeted using a BT gene, which allowed them to go to a very specific site on the DNA and take that section out and insert it with either DNA from another organism or just modify the DNA that was already in there. So GMOs have seen a lot of support over the years, as they can be the answer to a lot of the world's food questions. It is predicted by FAO.org that by the year 2050, we will need to produce 70% more food than we do now. This is a very large quantity, and the only way a lot of people think that this will be able to be achieved is not going to be by planting more land area. It's going to be by modifying the plants and crops that we already have to produce more yield than they were previously able to. This resulted in a shift of focus from necessarily making, again, more pesticide and more pests and weed resistant strains to crops that will just produce more yield and will be able to feed the country or feed the world in the years to come. Genetic engineered corn has become the most important crop that genetic engineering has produced. This is because corn is not only used for eating, but it is used for many other applications around the world and in everyone's daily lives. Mycotoxins are the toxins that are found. They're a fungus that are found in corn around the world that is due to the fact of poor storage in either poor silo containers or when the corn is being transported around the world. What this does is it causes vast and these birth defects that have a lot of effect on the child being born, whether it be spina bifida, neurological problems, so on and so forth. So in the US, we don't have as big of a problem or in other first world countries with mycotoxins as third world countries such as some South American countries, Africa, and some of the Middle East. So a way to shift around this are edible vaccines, which are taking the genome of an animal or a plant and making it produce a vaccine on its own. This is great and all. The only problem with this lies in the fact that these vaccines are still hard to get to these remote places of the world because you need coolers to keep them cold when you're transporting them. You need if you have an injectable vaccine, you need doctors or nurses who are trained to inject the vaccine. We can get around most of that with edible vaccines. So an example of this is the golden rice. This was one country. I think it was the Philippines. They were the first ones to okay widespread use of golden rice. And what this has is a lot of vitamin A, which is something that people in the Philippines die from because they don't have enough of it in their diet. So by making this regular rice a different color, basically, as a result of genetic engineering, that way many children were able to see adulthood. Now, of course there's support, but of course there's going to be people that think the opposite. So people who are opposed to GMOs look at factors such as unexpected gene interaction. This is the interaction between the new DNA that was introduced into the genome and the existing DNA in the animal. This can lead to cancers And another reason this could lead to cancers is because of the increased amount of pesticides called glyphosate, or brand name Roundup. Having used more of this because the shift of focus has been more on the yield of the crop as opposed to the herb or the weed resistance of the crop. Protein alteration and allergies. This really comes into play when looking at, again, the new introduced proteins that result as from the modifying the DNA. If someone didn't have an allergy to a food before, but then they ate, maybe they had this food that was not genetically engineered. Well, then they have this food years later that is genetically engineered after, a new technology was found and a new protein was formed because of this. Well, that person might eat the food and have an allergic reaction and not know that they were, sick or allergic to the product. Horizontal gene transfer, that is when the species or two individuals of the same species of the same generation are able to pick up DNA from each other, and that could be dangerous as humans can it's saying that humans could absorb DNA from the same generation, not necessarily from other people even, but from the plants and animals that we consume. So that's where people that see genetic engineering see a negative health effect there, as it is a potential that we could absorb some bad DNA and incorporate it into our own genome from the stuff that we eat. So in conclusion, it is thought that genetic engineering will be the next best thing, as it will be able to feed the country, feed the world, and better many people's lives for the long run. Negative effects have not been seen, and they have just been potential negative effects. These cancers and whatnot have not been seen to cause any more negative health effects than people that do not eat them. So in conclusion, genetic engineering will be the next best thing in the world to combat the food problem. And I feel that without genetic engineering, we would be a lot worse off than we are now. And we would still be hunter-gatherers following our prey, as we would not have enough food. We would not be able to plant enough food to eat in our backyards. Thank you.